What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another hype versus reality for you guys. And what that's going to be about today is this guy. That's right, guys. This is the Real Steel Griffin. The model number is E775. And this is the aluminum scale version with 14C28N. This is the budget option. They do make a version that's titanium with, I believe, S35 VN. I believe it might be M390, but I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. And yeah, this is a button lock or something they also call a plunge lock. There's a few different names, but it's pretty much what we would consider a button lock. And it has aluminum scales. Like I said, these are 7075 aluminum scales, which is a really common aluminum for this type of application. It's used in airplanes and stuff like that as well. Yeah, it's a very strong, highly corrosion resistant aluminum. And then, yeah, like I said, or actually this is also on roller bearings, which are going to be much different than your normal ball bearings. These have like almost like rollers that are placed in, just at different angles throughout. There's like a ring and then a plate where the bearings are actually set inside the plate. And it makes for a really smooth, very smooth feeling bearing. So, and also has more surface area on each bearing. So it's definitely a nice, strong type of bearing system for knives, although we don't see it very often. Like I said, there is a more expensive version of this. This version goes for right around $50 to $60. I think the average cost is like $55. Some places have them for like $59. I think the retail price is like $68.99 or something like that. So, yeah, just a really nice budget option. Real Steel makes some really cool budget option knives. They also make some like a more expensive line. You guys maybe saw my review of this guy. This is the Real Steel Metamorph. And this is just like probably my second Real Steel, and really excited. This one had the roller bearing, so I was really happy with the action on this guy and wanted to get some more. And I like button locks, so I figured this would be a good option. Sorry about the shadow lighting right here. I am using natural light, so it is what it is. But thanks guys for coming along with me on this one. If you don't know my hype versus reality, for right now, guys, just turn this thing off if you're looking for a shortcut review. My hype versus reality is going to be a very comprehensive, in-depth review. That is going to, first off, I'm going to talk about the hype, like whether it be like community hype, like coming from manufacturer, distributor, or the designer, or it could be hype created by the community in like blade forums and YouTube and stuff like that. And then there's also the hype that we create ourselves, whether you like something like button locks or you like 14C28N or something like that. So in saying that, I'm going to get right into this. I'm going to start with the specs. I go ahead and put those on the screen right here. I don't want to waste your guys' time spewing off a bunch of numbers, so I do it in this fashion. And then I'll go ahead and bring you guys back, and we'll go into some size comparisons. I'll start with some Spydercos. Here's a pair of 3, which is definitely going to be a smaller knife. And then I'll go ahead and bring in the Manix 2, which is definitely more in the same type size range, although it's a little bit smaller if we line up the butts here. Blade's a little bit longer as well, probably about an 1/8 inch. And I'll get those off the table. These are both Knife Center exclusives, by the way, and Crewwear. So yeah, you guys know I love Crewwear, and the Smooth G10's great. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in some Benchmades. Here's the 940, the original 940. Very similar sized knife, although a little bit smaller again. And then the Griptilian. This is a full size grip with some aftermarket micarta scales on there. And this is a really, really good size comparison, at least in length. And like what you're going to get out of your handle and stuff like that, grip size. But yeah, it's really a nice size comparison, although it's probably a little bit broader and thicker as well. A little more hand-filling in that sense, but I'll get those guys out of the way. these aftermarket scales, if you guys haven't seen them on Instagram, these are from a guy in Russia. I think it's Igor. Oh man, I'll have to put that on the screen, but Igor something. Really nice scales. Really happy with them. And then last but not least, I'll bring in a few. I'll bring in a CRK. This is the large Sabenza, of course, with the micarta inlays. This is just a little bit slightly longer knife, but very similar size. And then, of course, the Keen. This is the Laconico Keen, produced by distributed by Mastraw, and just a slightly smaller knife. That's it for the size comparisons today. Or actually, you know what? Let me bring one more in just because it's his brother. This is the Real Steel Terra. And I got these around the same time. Got to like kind of test them both at the same time. So it was a really good comparison here. And pretty much a similar size. The Terra is just slightly longer. But when you're talking grip size, that's a little bit longer. And of course your cutting edge, because there's no choil here. So yeah, moving right along, I'm going to go ahead and get into the hype. There wasn't a whole lot of hype on this knife. There hasn't been a whole lot of people that have actually even reviewed this knife. It's not out there all that much. I did see a long time ago, I think I saw a Kevin Cleary video, although I don't watch his channel all that much. I think when I initially went looking for this, I saw a video on his channel. And then I think the Neves did a video just recently. They got this just recently, and they were all stoked on it. I've had it now for probably about 8 months, maybe. And even though I don't carry it all that much, the carrying that I did of it, I did get a lot of use on it. And I've already taken this thing apart like twice, I think, and put it back together and, changed the oil in there and did all kinds of stuff. So I'll get more into that later. But yeah, so there wasn't a whole lot of hype. There is a lot of hype surrounding like button locks in the community and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say on this knife specifically. Oh, and also on like 14C28N, there's some hype on that, at least for me personally. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. There's not a whole lot. Even the hype on the roller bearings, I don't hear a lot of hype. I hear a lot of bad hype on like per se aluminum scales and stuff like that, but and I also hear some negative. I don't think I hear a lot of negative hype on button locks, but there's mostly like positive hype on button locks. But there is a little bit of negative that comes with button locks. Also, there's like for instance pushing the button while you're using it, or like there is a slight bit of play a lot of times in like up and down play with button locks. So another thing that is somewhat of a negative hype that could come associated with button locks. In saying that, I'm going to go into the reality because like I said, there's not a whole lot of hype on this knife. It's not as common of a knife. People don't generally know about it in a lot of cases. So in saying that, I'm going to go into the reality. And the reality of this knife is it's a pretty awesome option as a budget knife. I really was impressed by things like the blade. Blade stock is nice and thin. I think it's 13 hundredths. And it was ground fairly thin. It's not like like a smoking behind the edge thickness, but it was ground pretty well. We've got a nice, smooth, very comfortable handle in aluminum. The knife is fairly light all around. I'll get more into that. It was really just a nice example. I started to look at it, and as far as like fit and finish, the knife is done very well. Everything's chamfered very well. The knife was centered when I got it, although as you guys can see, it's definitely a little bit off there to the left. So it's kind of moved around a little bit throughout the life of the knife. It really was done well though for finish wise. The blade is a nice like stone wash with a bit of a satin to it. Very, very nice finish on the blade. And just the handle was well done all around as far as fit and finish goes. There was a few spots where you can see where the finish is just a little bit inconsistent as far as whatever kind of powder coat or coating they did on this aluminum. It doesn't really look like an anodization, more like a color, like a coating. But there were a few inconsistencies, but nothing super critical. I mean, I can't even find them right now, looking at it through the viewfinder and stuff. So it's really, really well done for fit and finish. As far as fit, with the lock's done really well. There is the slightest bit of side to side right now, and that's just to get it somewhat, smoother, where I can kind of swing it in easily. It was somewhat smooth and free dropping when I first got it, but it did have that little bit of play side to side. Up and down is like, oh man, you can barely feel a little bit of movement, but it's pretty solid, and I would never be worried about it like coming down on my fingers. Very, very solid lock. And it also has this, which I'll talk about a little more lately, but this is a lockout. So you just slide this forward, and now the button lock is locked out. So it's very, very safe. Almost makes it into a fixed blade, essentially. And then you don't even have to worry about pushing the button while you're using it. So that's a nice touch on this knife. But as far as the fit and finish all around, it really was done well. Just that little bit of play, but nothing that I find dangerous or annoying or anything I couldn't live with. Just the slightest bit of side to side and up and down. Even less than the side to side, but just that slight bit. As far as the action goes, as you guys can see, I'm already kind of fidgeting with it as I talk, as always, but you can Spidey flick it very easily. It does rock it out. There is that little bit of detent, but you can overcome it if you really, really push down on it, or I should say throw it like that. Just, you can overcome that. Although I never worry about it like opening in your pocket. It's pretty good retention. But I mean, I can almost gravity flick any knife. I mean, there's not a lot of knives I can't gravity flick, to be honest with you. So, one of them would be the Sabinza, though. I probably... Oh, there we go. You can do it, but it's a lot harder. So, yeah, just pretty much every knife you can do that with. But this has a pretty good detent. Even though the detent on this isn't like actually a detent ball falling into a detent hole. This is more like where the button lock locks in. There's just like a little ramp that goes into where it snaps in. So, yeah. Really nice action. You can obviously roll it out. You can obviously Spidey flick, like I said. Or I shouldn't call it Spidey flick. Middle finger flick. Or probably even first finger, yeah. So then, of course, you can thumb flick it too in the same vein. So just really nice action. And as far as the dropping action, it's not like, you guys can see, it's not like some button locks where you can almost just kind of flick it. Oh, and there's your other deployment. Just push the lock and swing it out. You can do that pretty easily. But again, that dropping action isn't like stupid. Like, it's not as fidget friendly as something like the ProTech Mordax, but still it's Jesus. It's still very fun, and you can see I can easily swing that in, and once it's past a certain point, you can kind of just, jiggle it in. Very fun, very smooth, guys. It's very smooth. Almost feels like something on phosphor bronze or Teflon washers, because usually bearings you can kind of feel that roll. Even with something like this, it's pretty smooth, but you can kind of feel a little bit of roll. Something like this with those roller bearings, very, very smooth. This is very well done. I'm very happy with the action and everything. But yeah, as far as use, guys, as far as me using the knife, I'll go ahead and put some video footage of me right now on. So in use, guys, like I said, I didn't really carry this knife all that much. As you guys know, I'm not much of a budget guy, and it's just like something like this isn't necessarily going to beat something like a Sabenza or a Hinderer into my pocket, of course, or even something like a Benchmade or Spyderco. They tend to win going into my pocket in the morning. But what I will say is when I did carry this knife, it performed really well, and I could never have. There's nothing that it left on the table that would necessarily leave me wanting one of those other knives. It just in the morning when you're picking one, this just wasn't the one that beat out the other ones into my pocket. But in saying that, I did carry it quite a bit. It worked very well. It slices very well, no matter how thick I went. Whether I stacked it up 3/4 thick on the cardboard, even sometimes thicker, it really did slice well. Like I said, with the 0.13 stock thickness, which is 1300ths. With that stock thickness and a fairly good, nice flat grind, this is a full flat ground blade, and it really does slice well. It performs somewhere in the middle of something like a Para 3 and a Benchmade 940 or something like that. It's right in that range, and it really did slice well. And as far as performance on the blade, it did do very well. And with it being 14C28N, you guys know that is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best budget option steels. And it's made to be in knives. It was made as a knife steel, and it was made as a production knife steel, essentially. It has a very, very easy heat treat for something like production, in a production setting. And even at a low HRC, 14C28N seems to perform much better than other steels like D2 and other things like that could be used as budget options. We are seeing that in Gerald's testing, or Steve's for that matter. So if you go and look at all the data from those two channels, or even Thomas Hosang, when you go look at the data, you'll see that 14C28N, even at a lower HRC, will outperform something like D2 in cutting like cardboard and other things like that. Not necessarily rope, where carbides might come into play more. Something like 14C28N doesn't have as many carbides, but it does have a nice, very fine grain structure, and it performs with it gets a very fine edge and performs and holds that fine edge for a very long time, or at least just comparably. But yeah, again, this thing really performed well, and as far as ergonomics go, it just has an excellent handle as far as ergos go. Very smooth, nothing objectionable in the lines, or there's no finger grooves necessarily that are going to push you into a certain grip, and it really just it was very comfortable in use. There's a few things I might point out later that could become an issue or something that might affect your ergonomics, but nothing that really I found too objectionable. And for the price, there's not too many knives I would say would beat the hell out of this thing at that price point. It's just really well done for the price. I love the weight of the knife, and then its overall, just the way it's going to work for you, the usage. It's really nice knife when it comes to the price versus the performance you're going to get. So in sharpening this 14C28N, it did seem to sharpen really well. And it took a smoking edge. It deburred pretty easily, although I did struggle with it, I think, a little bit. It came off nice and clean at the end, and I didn't have to go above and beyond to remove the burr. It was fairly easy to get off at the end, and it did. It held that edge for a nice long time. I was very impressed with it. So and I did, like I said, I had this and the Terra at the same time. Although I think the Terra maybe performed just slightly better as far as the 14C28 is concerned. The Terra is also a thinner behind the edge dimension, so it was hard to tell if it was just the ease of the cutting because of that behind the edge thickness. Although I will say the edge felt stickier longer on the Terra. I don't know if it was just my examples. Again, guys, this is depending on your example and the version you, or the actual example you get. So it's all relative. In saying that, I am going to go ahead and bring you guys back and I'll talk a lot more about the ergonomics and other things here. And then I'll go ahead and bring in like the scale, and let me go ahead and grab the micrometers, or the calipers, as a lot of guys will know them as. I'm going to turn this on and make sure it's all zeroed out. And this is at, I believe it's at 15 degrees per side. Almost positive. Got about 20 thousandths, just around 20 thousandths behind the edge, which is just like your average Spyderco or Benchmade, guys. That's why I'm getting that same kind of performance. 23. So yeah, as I said, this could be much thinner behind the edge with how thin the stock is and being full flat ground, but it's still done pretty well. So 23. Getting out to the tip, I don't think it's going to get much thicker, but it'll probably go up to like, I would say like 27, 28 probably. Oh, up into that 31 thousandths at the tip. As you guys can see, it does taper, but not too much. So you do have a relatively thicker tip there for if you wanted to do some light prying, guys. This is obviously not a knife you would be doing heavy prying with, but very well done. Although I think it could have been ground much thinner, especially with how thin that stock is. Like I said, it could have, I mean, it's not super thin. The 940 has a thinner stock. I think this is 12. This is 1300s. So it's not super thin, but it has a broader blade. So I would have hoped they would have ground it a bit thinner, especially back here. Could have been much thinner. But that's really one of my only gripes as far as that the blade grind is concerned. I like the blade shape overall. I do like the way it looks, that drop point. This finger choil here is very functional. You can grip the knife up here, and especially, I didn't find myself almost pushing the button anyways, but with this button right here, with this slide lockout, you don't even have to worry about pushing the button. So that's another nice thing if you did want to choke up and get some work done up here. I found it to be pretty comfortable in the choked up position. Also back here, it's fairly comfortable, although you do have a bit of distance here between you and the cutting edge. Not something it bothers me, but there is a little bit of a finger groove here, but I can almost still hold it in a lot of different places. Again, guys, my hands are 3 3/4 inch wide, about 4 inches tall, and then from this point to this point, I'm about 6 1/4 to 6 1/2 from this point here to this point. So as you know, that'll kind of tell you what this knife is going to feel like or fit like in your hand. There's a lot of room here to kind of move around, and I do think the ergonomics are excellent on this knife, and everything's chamfered very well. The clip, guys, very, very ergonomic. I never noticed it in use. It's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen. I think it's kind of ugly, to be honest, but as far as functionality goes, very nice ramp, although it flattens out here so it's not poking you. It's a lot of clearance back here so it won't get caught on your seam or anything. Very, very nice, smooth and in and out with it being up against the aluminum here as well. So it really just slid in and out nicely. It isn't the deepest carry. Locked myself out. Isn't the deepest carry, obviously. You got about 3/4 of an inch sticking out of your pocket. So if that's something would bother you, then this might not be the knife for you. I don't know if they have a deep carry clip, aftermarket deep carry or something you could put on there. Maybe Real Steel has another knife that you could switch the clips out. I don't know, but it's just a really nice, I mean, it's just one thing, you know, if you don't like deep carry. As far as the looks of the knife, I do like them. I think it's kind of cool, a little bit like futuristic looking. Not exactly ideal. I don't love it, but I think it's pretty cool. I like the blade shape. I just don't necessarily love the handle, and the aperture is kind of funky, but it works very well, and it's, hey, you know, they're trying to be different, so I get it. Very, very cool in that sense, but not like I wasn't necessarily drawn to the knife by the look. I don't like love the way this ends or anything, but very well done in execution. So yeah, going in and out of the pocket. I guess I'll go into the pocket now because I've pretty much finished as far as the the performance of the knife goes. The ergonomics, like I said, were very, very good. And I guess the one gripe I could have, or people might have, is that this is very slippery. But I do think that there's enough contouring on this knife where I don't feel like it's going to slip out of my hand. Although maybe in like the button lock use, actuating and stuff, this might feel slick. My hands are kind of sweaty right now. It's kind of hot in my house right now. But yeah, it is not, I didn't find it to be very slippery, honestly, in personal use. Although some guys might bitch about that. In the pocket, though, like I said, going in and out very easily. It does kind of slip back like that because of the angle. And I found it to be almost like disappear in the pocket really well. Very, very slender knife, just over an inch, probably 1 3/8 as far as width goes. And no flipper or anything to contend with. It just fits really nice in the pocket and almost disappears. As far as the coating is, it really just held up very nicely. You guys can see that. I didn't really have any big scratches or anything, and I wasn't being careful, obviously, with this type of knife and that type of price point. I wasn't being careful, even though you guys know I don't really be careful with anything, even if it's a $450 Sabenza. I don't really care. I'm still gonna treat it the same way as I treat this. 3.4 ounces, 3.44. I think that's right around where it says like 3.46 or something in the specs, but really nice carry. And this is where something like this aluminum, this is why aluminum's the better choice sometimes, because I bet the titanium version is much heavier and also comes in a lot more expensive, guys. That's why you choose aluminum on something like this. But yeah, really, really well done. And for the weight, you get tons of performance out of it. And very, very nice balance on this guy. Very, very nice balance. But, I mean, you're getting 3.5 inches of blade cutting here for 3.44 ounces. So if you guys worry about that blade to weight ratio or blade to handle ratio, this is very, very well done. Although, you know, again, the cutting edge could have been another 1/4 inch, whatever, and you could have got rid of the choil. But I do think you need the choil for where this lines up. I think that's another reason they did that for this lockout. It kind of had to extend that blade a little bit. And it really doesn't bother me because this is a fully functioning choil. Kind of like, unlike the smock, I feel like the smock was kind of funky in that space. This really executed it well and still very comfortable. So, really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the knife overall. I really thought it was a really good option for the price. I think at around $55, it's hard to not like this knife or be compelled to try it. It's really just a great value. And at 14C28N, the aluminum scales, button lock, with the lockout, I think you're getting a great value for the money. And it was very well executed for that. I think that my example is not as smooth as some of the other ones I've seen, where it's more like free dropping. But it's nothing I could object about. I really do enjoy even just messing around with this knife. It's very fun. So, yeah, that was me. But yeah, a really nice knife, and I would really suggest it, guys. I would say that if you're out there and you're looking for something in this price point, I don't think you can go wrong with this option in 14C28N. I will bring the Terra in. I'm going to have this hype versus reality around the same time, so I'll kind of do this in both videos. But I will say the Terra, depending on your usage, like if you're someone that's going to be using this knife at work and that's generally what you're doing with it, I would say that the Terra is probably a better option. I think this is a very, very heavy-duty, well-made knife that you could beat the hell out of, and you wouldn't have to ever worry about anything on this. It does have a thin tip, so I wouldn't be prying necessarily, but a lot of times at work, you'll have a pry bar or something else if you have to pry. You're not going to use your knife necessarily. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this knife, and I think it's a very well-done knife, too. So I think if you're looking for more of a work knife, I'd go this route. Or if you're that kind of guy, or if you have a really big hand, I think this is a really good option. But otherwise, if you're looking for more of a classy knife, or you're not really doing a lot of work with your knife, it's more like just for, pocket jewelry type of thing, I think this is an excellent option, and I would go this route. So I think it just depends on your application, which pretty much is the case with every knife. But this is definitely more of a fidget friendly, kind of knife. I think like, and I'd more likely have this in my pocket if I was going out to a nice dinner than the Terra. So if you're between the two, I would say that would be the way to decide, is maybe the application and stuff like that. Or if you're more of a fidget type of guy, I'd go with the Griffin over the Terra. But otherwise, I think this is, I think that the Terra might be better for certain applications as well. So in saying that, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you got some value from it. Yeah, and that's it. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.